Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall. Whether you are listening to us or watching us, I just want to know, I want you all to comment and tell me why you know you're crazy today. Also, please like, share, subscribe, spam us. Just show us love. So it's Podcast Tuesday, right? And I have the privilege and pleasure of coming across some of the internet's most enigmatic, the world's most enigmatic characters. And extraordinary people with some extraordinary stories. Today, I am sitting with a young lady that I met on TikTok. And by the time you guys hear this, I don't know if TikTok's going to be a thing anymore. Who knows? But I'm sitting here with Chelsey, right? And Chelsey and I have been connected on social media for a while. And she follows the VIP Stepmom page. Now, if you are not a stepmom, you still need to stay and listen to this because Chelsey's story, and you guys are here because you got some blended family chaos happening. This is why you talk to me. Chelsea's story, like a lot of us, we're like, oh my God, my situation's so crazy. I bet you never heard anything like this. Chelsey had, I don't know how many parts to her story I'm going to ask her, but Chelsey has been through some, excuse my French. I'm probably going to bleep that out because I'm trying to do better with my potty mouth. Y'all know that. So after this dance break, we're bringing on Chelsey and she's going to tell us about all of the things.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. Naja Hall.
Chelsey. What's up, girlfriend? How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you know what? I couldn't let another moment pass without actually sitting and talking to you. Online, you come off like this super real, endearing, the girl next door, like I would go to Starbucks with you. I'd be like, girl, you know what? Let's go get some peppermint, whatever people drink when they go to Starbucks. Because I'm on a diet now, so I don't do it anymore. But, you're so relatable, so easy to talk to, but you've been through this horrific nightmare of a situation. And TikTok is supporting you and showing you love because you found your people, you found your tribe. And well, first of all, for those of you that don't know Chelsey, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about herself. And then how she came to be and why she started sharing her story online. So Chelsey, that's like 3 things you got to say, but just introduce yourself to the people.
Hi, I'm Chelsey. I used to have an account called The White Flag, and now my TikTok account is changed for whatever reason, but I think it was because, of the story and having to go to court because of my TikTok. So my handle was changed, and it was originally something that I got on the app for fun. During the pandemic, I had a 1 and 2-year-old. So it would be something that I would just watch funny videos. I wouldn't even interact. I wouldn't even like it. I just send them and I had no idea what I was doing. And then my oldest stepdaughter, she was like, let's make a TikTok. And she actually made my very first video on my account. And then I just decided to start sharing stories of, being a mom to toddlers. And it started to grow. And I always wanted to share about my stepmom journey, but it was such a taboo topic. I was afraid. And it was just something that was inside of me that every day was like, just try. So for a while I did put out little tiny tidbits of like hints that I was a stepmom, and none of those videos would take off. If anything, they got hate for them. And so I just held my tongue until I didn't.
So what was the catalyst? What was the fire starter to you saying, I'm not holding my tongue anymore. I got to talk about this.
It's very sad. So as of right now, I've been a stepmom for 12 years. So at the time that I decided this is just unacceptable and there has to be a community, I had found you, I had found a couple other stepmom pages, and I was like, if they can do this, like I can do this. Like this is important to talk about. And in our personal life, there had just been one too many things that I felt ex-wife should not have been able to get away with. So I threw out almost like a Hail Mary post, and it did well. And I just put my foot on the gas ever since.
I think I've seen that post, but what was that post? Like, what was the thing to where, like, what were you talking about in that post?
The original post, I had said something along the lines of, I was going on to my stepdaughter's accounts just to look at them because we hadn't seen them in so long. And that was my only connection. I would, watch them do a couple dances, and then I would check and see if like ex-wife had an account, and I would block ex-wife because I knew her pattern just from our history, and I just didn't want her to have access to my page. So the second that I went and saw that she had a page, she immediately blocked me from my stepdaughter's accounts. And something in my brain was just like, now that I'm blocked from everything and I have no access, what do I have to lose now? That was my last connection. And
Yeah.
that's what I said. I said, if she continues to lie or if she continues to do anything, I'm just going to go ahead and share what she does because maybe, just maybe, that will slow her down.
So did it slow her down by you exposing the truth or your truth? Did she say, "Oh my God, I need to be a better person"? Because
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, I knew the answer to that, but I had to. So what did it cause? Like, what was the ripple effect of you deciding to share this person's actions?
So originally I made that post in maybe like March, and there was no reaction, nothing. My husband didn't get a text or an email, nothing. And it wasn't until a few months later, last November, that I decided, while I was sick on the couch and we just had one more personal issue that took place. And I think that was just, my heart was just broken. And I was like, you know what? This is it. I'm going for it. And I just started that post. I believe the first post was that the family court system needs some major, major adjustments because what she's gotten away with is criminal.
Insane. It's literally criminal. It's insane.
Yes.
But,
yes.
That's one of the things that a lot of us that have been on either side, whether you're the biological parent watching this, the older stepchild, I hope little children aren't watching this podcast, but, or the step parent, you see that the court system does deserve an overhaul. And I think it starts with the people that are running the systems, right? Because judges, when you tell them about parental alienation, and unless they've been through it, people call parental alienation a pseudoscience, but we know that's a damn lie. We know it's a very real thing. And these people aren't trained in mental health. They aren't trained in conflict resolution. They aren't even trained to see who's lying through their freaking teeth. So the overhaul definitely needs to start with training of the bearers of the court. So there's that. That's my little spiel.
I couldn't agree more.
What is something, you guys have been to court quite a bit. As a matter of fact, your TikTok has come under fire in a very legal way. What are some of the most egregious things that you heard about yourself in court? I always like to talk about the tall tales. So what are the egregious things that Chelsey did?
So essentially, by sharing the stories of the facts of what she has done to my family, just by me sharing those stories, it put her family in danger. So literally a year ago today, she was filing a civil protection order against me and my TikTok account. And on the 18th, that is when a cop showed up at my door, serving me and ultimately pausing my account, silencing me, saying that I am a threat. And it was a civil protection order, not only for her, but for the girls and her parents. So it was like a 6-person protection order.
Okay, so what does it mean to pause your account? Because I've heard of people like getting threats, but does a cop take your phone and say, "Give it here, I'm going to delete the app"? What exactly does that look like?
So luckily, my dad is an attorney. In fact, part of the reason why this story is so upsetting is because my dad, he used to be a prosecutor and then became a family law attorney. So we have like an actual inside source that we utilize, and just saying, "Hey, she's done this or she's done that. Can she do that? Like what?" And he was always there to say, "No, she cannot do that." And I don't know what people do who don't have that kind of help when you're dealing with someone who is this high conflict, because he was, priceless to us. But when I told him that a cop was at my door, even the cop was like, "I'm not even sure that I understand." And my small children were there and they're like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "Do you know such and such?" And it was ex-wife's name. And I was like, "I do." And she's like, "I don't even really understand what I'm handing you, but it has to do with social media." So she's like, "Get to reading and she's like, I would get an attorney immediately if I were you. And she just walked back out to her car, and I just stood there like, what in
So
the
she
world?
served you and was like, here, take this piece of paper. I know it's
Yeah.
BS, but
Yeah.
so in this
But it was
thing,
not. It was not BS. It was very, very real. And it was to silence my account basically meant do not do anything that is written in this order until you definitely speak to an attorney. So I no longer, and at that moment when she chose to serve me, I had already been posting like mid-November, and she served me mid-January. So she let almost an 80-part series like go on. And then, but what she did was incredibly clever. But yes, 80 parts were there. And then I just had to pause, and I just could not speak on a topic that was basically going viral. Boom, right in the middle.
okay. Were you able to be like, hey guys, I got served, so I can't talk about this anymore?
Breadcrumbs. No. Like I would just like look at the camera and be like, I have a very important meeting that I must attend in person. I was just like tiptoeing
People know.
around. Yeah.
People know. People know, like, uh-oh. And I'm sure the comments were like, people know. So there's that. In this order, and I don't want to give anybody out there any ideas. Don't you guys get any ideas? Or maybe you will. I want you to get ideas because we're about shutting down crap. But this was legitimate. So in the order, it's basically like you're probably being accused of defamation or slander or libel or one of those things, right?
It was essentially, she was saying, Chelsey is making up awful stories, making up. That was it. But it wasn't so much a defamation case or a slander. It was more, I was putting her and her family in a direct line of danger. It was a
Were
protection order.
people was somebody going to her house because of your social media and saying, hey, I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to burn your fence. Like, was that happening?
So according to her, because this does go to trial.
And we need proof if you're going to say it. So she has to prove that there's imminent danger or a threat.
Yes, which she could not do, but did she make those statements? Yes. And her statement was that they thought that there was a mysterious car parked outside their house that I sent, or someone knocking on their door that they didn't know. And it just was so painful to sit through and just be like, why are we even entertaining this at all? What a joke.
Yes.
What a mockery of our legal system. And that's my whole point.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it's about though. If you know how to file a contempt order, like in a lot of states, it's $15. You go down to the courthouse and you do it yourself. You don't have to pay the $3,000 retainer for the attorney to do it. And one thing I know that people that are especially psychotic, they really study way more than us sane people. Like they know the little holes in the system. They know what to say. They know when you go to court, Chelsey, and you know this, you guys also know this out there. It's not really who tells the truth. It's about who tells the best version of their truth, the most believable story.
Correct.
And it sounds like she was coming up with her own truth, aka a lie, but some sort of way it wasn't too believable because your TikTok was not only restored, but then it started to soar.
Correct. Yeah. Thank goodness, because it definitely slowed down the pace of that it was growing. And I'm sure that was ultimately her goal, to just pause things from getting out of hand. And that would probably be the only victory that she did get. But unfortunately, what she did was draw that out for almost 6 months. An insane amount of money had to be spent. It just proved that there is so much catching up that the legal system needs to do as far as social media is concerned. And she should have never been even able to file what she did. But again, what she's filed in the last 12 years would make your head spin.
Okay, besides that one, what else is like, oh my God, this is so dumb. What other things have been filed?
False accusations against family members of mine. Like horrendous false accusations that are life altering. Prison.
You can put somebody in jail and take their whole livelihood.
1,000%. And she has the incredible ability to manipulate others. I've never seen it because every time I've ever seen her in person, she's not good. But if I'm not around or my husband's not around or my family, when we know what the truth is, she must be very good at what she does. And making up the stories that she has told to others are just horrifying. That my husband is obsessed with her, abusive, doesn't have a job, doesn't pay child support. I mean, things that are so far from accurate. And, from calling me a homewrecker, and that was her whole victim beginning, to saying that my husband's never been remarried and he just is obsessed with her. And there's nothing's off limits.
Yeah. When is the last time you guys have seen the girls, your husband's kids?
Seeing them, it has been about a little over a year, and spoken to them, actually face to face spoken to them, has been over 2 years.
And I really want the guys that are listening to this, I want you guys to kind of perk up here for a second. And because, we've been through that too, that severe void in being able, a dad being able to contact his kids.
Yes.
And I've heard a lot of people say, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to live if that happened to me. Well, it's like, thank God it hasn't happened to you, but it's a very real thing. How does your household cope? How does your husband stay balanced?
If I'm being honest, it's very sad and it's hard to watch. But to say that he has an incredible ability to compartmentalize, I think, he was a Marine. People say you never say was. He is a Marine.
Yeah.
And I think that he has training truly in his character of how he can just put that over here and then he can function in his day-to-day life. Because if you really start to think about what has happened to this incredibly involved, sweet, gentle, wonderful girl dad, it's not fair. And it would be enough to send some people,
over the edge.
Yeah.
Way over the edge. To do something really bad to
Yes.
themselves or others. And we hear it happening a lot. People just snapping because it's almost like she's been supported by the legal system and her flying monkeys.
Yes.
To continue the torture.
Yes.
I believe people like that don't really have friends. And I don't know, that girl from a hole in the wall.
Yeah.
But so I don't want to speak about her anymore, but just personality types that are so incredibly difficult. Do you find that women like that, do they have a group of girlfriends that can really keep it real with them? Or what do you think the dynamic is?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think, especially as someone who is a girl's girl, I do have a lot of friends. At the moment that I met her, you just know that this is not someone who has friends. She's incredibly tied to her family, very, very enabled and encouraged by just family. And if she ever did have a friend that came in and out in our history, it was very short-lived. I mean, I'm talking
very short-lived,
under a year, and it would be obsessive, incredibly obsessive. That friend would be at the pickup and drop-offs, and you're like, where did you come from? Who are you? And then gone, never to be heard from again. Just like
it's
a boyfriend.
What story did she tell you to get you so involved to make you think that we were so dangerous that you needed to be here?
Exactly.
It's that right there. I also find that personality types like those, not that woman in particular, because I don't know her from a hole in the wall. Right. It is hard for them to keep a relationship or keep a mate. Or if they do, they find like a beta male, like a very weak guy that's dependent on them. Mm-hmm. But it's hard for him to even stay around because he's like, you are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yes. And the thing that made this so, not the thing, one of the many things that made this so frustrating is that she does have an ability to manipulate others and get people to feel sorry for her. And she has been remarried. She has had boyfriends that she brought around at every drop off. And it was always, you could tell it was always for my husband. It was always his, look how much better I'm doing. And the man that she married was a pastor who was also divorced. So she's going to form a better blended family. She's now a pastor's
wife. So she was a first lady of a church?
Correct. And she couldn't wait to tell you. She could not wait to be like, look what I've got now.
Girl, what church are you at? Because you're leading out of that flock to hell. So,
well, that church is now closed. If that's saying anything.
Is that marriage over?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully he can redeem himself. You don't claim to be a man of the cloth and then dance with the devil. And hopefully he can redeem himself and pick up the pieces after dealing with such a personality. It's tough. It's toughest on the kids. I hear there was Stephanie, this therapist named Stephanie in the UK. She was on the podcast a couple years ago. And she said something. Her mother was high conflict. And she grew up in a state where she was constantly upset with her dad. She would be triangulated, probably like your stepkids are, yes. Mine are for sure. And she was like, I hated my dad at one point, but he did everything for us. He tried to come around. We knew mom was making it hard. He would sneak and visit us. Like he would come to school. We would ignore him. She was like, I was so mad at my dad because we knew our mom was crazy, but he was the one that got away. He got to escape and get a new house and have more kids and a new wife, and their life looked so good, but we were over here stuck with mom. And that's right. One thing that I think about with these kids that are stuck with these high conflict personality is how they feel and then how they'll pan out. What are is there anything that you and your husband are doing to, perhaps when the girls come back and say, hey, okay, we got our autonomy, we got out of the nut bin. Is there anything you and your husband are doing to ensure that they'll have a smooth transition into normalcy?
That's what makes this so hard, because the reason that my husband made the choice to stop visitation, that is something that was thrown in my face at court. There is nothing that's in writing that says that my husband or I cannot see them. So to make the choice voluntarily to just stop visitation, that was for the safety of all of us, because the accusations became so frequent and so intense. We're not saying she wasn't making accusations like, they get yelled at when they're there. Think the worst, and that's what it was. So yeah. When my husband decided that he was going to step back, that's when she really kicked into gear. They've been abandoned. He doesn't want you. See, I told you he would always do this. And although that is not the case, he messages them every day or every other day or weekly, or you know what I'm saying? Like he tries. All my messages are blocked. None of my messages have gone through for years, but we still try to contact them. No one responds. We still send birthday cards, birthday presents, Christmas presents. Up until last year, we were still attending their sporting events, but they could not make eye contact with us. And when you have a teenager who is trying to focus on the sport that she's playing, and mom is there and her whole family's there, and then stepmom and dad are off to the side, not engaging with her, or we're just trying to show you that you matter to us, and you're not.
You're made to look like a distraction.
Correct.
You feel bad, and you're like, should I step away?
Yeah. And he said, yeah. I have to remember that before I met him, he had been involved in this family. He was her brother's best friend. So he has a good 10 plus years of this abuse and knowledge of this family long before I stepped in. So as he's stepping into survivor mode, I was coming into it how does everyone not see what this is? This is. So yes, we are still trying to maintain contact, but whether or not it's reciprocated, it's not.
Yeah. Sometimes you almost think, is it better if I just step away? Because, if the kid does show any sort of affinity to dad and you, then they're going to catch hell when they get home. They're going to get in trouble. But, then it's like they see dad and you there and they have to ignore you guys. Now they're feeling bad. So I don't know. I would love to hear from some adult stepkids. What would they have needed when they know that families are at war? What would they have needed? I don't know. You just don't know. If you could say anything to the girls right now, if they're watching this, and I don't know, maybe they'll see it, maybe they won't, but what would you say to them?
That we love them, that anytime that they are ready and willing to speak or come home or anything, that we will welcome them with open arms. And we know that this is not their fault. We are fully aware that they are in survivor mode, and that, their mom is someone that needs them more than we do. And we know that because that's what they would tell us. Stop coming to pick me up. You don't need me. You'll be fine. But mom can't handle it when we're with you. And to hear a child verbalize that, you just know that this is a level of abuse that they recognize, but they don't. And
No.
what will the repercussions of this be in the long run? I have no idea, but it's frightening.
Yeah. Mom needs us, but you don't. Can you just back off? Can you guys are making our journey with things harder. You know, a lot of what you said, and I know you probably know this already, sounds like borderline personality disorder.
Yes.
You know, we talk about that so much on this podcast, but I feel like that's one of the most difficult. And there's people that have been diagnosed that have been on this podcast, and they talk about how difficult their own daily journey is of just the things that are in their head. And then some of them are aware enough or have had enough self-work, self-awareness therapy, whatever, to recognize how their personalities are just tough to coexist with and cope with. So it just sounds so much like that.
We had a therapist, one therapist in this whole time, and he was wacky, but it was an interesting dynamic because it was systemic family therapy, which we all agreed to going, and we could go together, we could go separate, but the idea was that he was allowed to share with us what she said, and we were allowed to speak, and he could be like, well, I'm going to call her and let her know that you said that. So do you stand by that? Like, there was no, essentially,
this is court ordered?
It was, yeah, well, it was suggested and it was agreed upon by all of us. So the courts picked him, but it was not in any kind of writing, like you have to be with him for the next year. It was, do this, do you guys agree to this? And then we could move on. So it was one of those like mediation type situations. And after one session that he had with her, he was like, he called my husband and he was like, well, it's without a doubt her, like this is her fault. Everything is her. And then she would call us and say, we're not going back to him. He's the worst. And we're like, he pegged you in one visit. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know?
So one visit. So he was like, okay. And I just wish that he could go back to tell the courts to say, hey, this person is the problem. These children need to be removed completely from that family system because they are toxic and they might produce two more individuals that are unwell out in this world. But there's that. But damn. So, and then you have two babies, you and your husband. And so the girls are big sisters, and your two babies are probably like, how do you cope? Because I talk to so many stepmoms that are so worried about their children's hearts being broken because they don't understand where the older siblings are. How do you manage that? And how do you manage your kids' emotions?
That is the hardest part because we had 5 years with the big girls before the babies were born. So in our minds, we were like, man, they know how much we love them. They know that they are not being replaced. They are important. So then when the babies came, we were so head first into, you guys are sisters. This is our family. Like, you are their big sisters. We miss you when you're gone. We talk about you daily. And you could see that the moment they walked out of our house, those were not your sister and sister and brother. Like, that is not your home. That is not it was never encouraged. The relationship was not encouraged. And that was devastating because my husband and I are both products of divorce. So we now know like how this could look and how this could unfold. And no one has to be victims of this divorce. And now my two babies and my husband and I are in grief therapy. And I don't know how this is going to turn out. I mean, my daughter has started kindergarten, first grade, and second grade, and has not spoken to her sisters to tell them about a day of school ever. And it is not fair. And she is probably the most affected because my son was only 3 the last time that he saw them. But if I even think about like moving furniture around in their bedroom, my daughter is, no, Mom, they'll be back. They'll be back. It's devastating. Yes.
Ooh. Okay, I don't know how you guys are going to take this, but generally speaking, because at one point, I was just like of the mindset, what if the stepmom that was in a high conflict situation and knew that there was a very big chance that her ours babies would be devastated, heartbroken, because those siblings would either be taught to hate them, not acknowledge them, or they just would stop coming around. Is there a way to minimize the older siblings' lives in the minds of the ours babies? Like, I'm not saying you would do that or if you could go back, but is there a way to like mitigate future pain? To be like, dad's kids are coming. And it sounds so cruel. It sounds so freaking cruel, like evil stepmomish almost. But
Yeah.
I would rather protect the babies that you are impacting than children that are being taught to be hurtful. And, like, is there a way that you could have, we as stepmoms could do anything to protect our babies when we know this will happen?
I would like to say yes, but in all fairness, I think when you are healthy and of sound mind, the idea that you have to pregame and pre-plan for the abuse, it's unnatural. There's nothing there that would be, and to know that I would have stepped in front of a vehicle for my stepdaughters, like, because I had ours babies after, I feel like when you don't have children first and then you bring children in, but you were a stepmom first, it changes your brain chemistry. So in my brain, I could not at the time separate. Had I had my babies first and joined a family, I could have definitely been able to separate or think more logically about or realistically how this was going to unfold. But I truly believed that, like, it was healthiest for those girls to know that when they came here, you are a big sister, you are important, you have a role, and just melt everybody together rather than being more standoffish. But
Yeah.
it was right off, like, the day that my daughter was born and the girls came to the hospital to meet her, I just knew. I was like, what happened? What happened in this week when you were so excited last week and now this week you don't care at all? And
Ooh,
it
was said to them?
fast.
It's like, what type of hellfire did they undergo to
Right.
change their minds when they saw this baby? They said, oh, this is a threat. Oh, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Were you ever fearful that you had to watch your baby and be like, wait a minute, because are these kids going to hurt my kid?
Unfortunately, yes. And that was one of the stories that I told on my TikTok account. And that was one of the stories that I really had a hard time deciding whether or not I wanted to share it, because I never wanted my stepdaughter to feel guilty for the things that she said and did, because I knew that she was sent there. She was sent to my house.
Well, what was the story that what was the story that you shared?
My daughter was 2 weeks old. And when my husband went to go pick the girls up for our weekly visits, I'm 2 weeks postpartum. He showed up and he was like, something's off. And he called me and I could hear her just screaming in the car. Just turn back around. Take me back to mom. I'm not going. I feel unsafe, uncomfortable when I'm with you. And I was like, bring her here. Like I was like, absolutely not. Like, this is just not going to be how we do it. And I was like convinced that if I saw her and I was like, honey, and when she walked in, she was just like, she refused to engage with me. She refused to look at me. And I remember thinking, just, honey, take a breath. And she said, no, I have to go. What if I just hurt the baby? And as soon as those words came out of her mouth, I remember my husband's head was like, what did you say?
You got to go.
I strapped that baby to my chest so fast. And I said, I don't even have any idea what would possess you, although I know exactly what possessed her to say that. I said, I know your heart. I know that you don't mean that, but I can't take that risk. Like, what kind of mother would I be if I didn't believe that she would? But I knew in my heart that those weren't her words. And then before I knew it, as soon as she got those words out, boom, 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 an officer's at my door. Like, it was so staged. It was so well thought out. It was like, she must have been told to go home, cause a scene, be chaotic, make a threat, and then I'll send the cops for a wellness check. And sure enough, he was there at our house within 10 minutes of us being home. And it was just crazy.
And so the cops said, hey, I need to do a wellness check. For what reason? What was the reason that the police officer, I'm sure I know what he was told, but what was the reason he was there?
Ironically enough, we're now in our home. This was the same officer that came to our apartment when we first got married, and he recognized my husband at the door. And my husband was like, well, hi. And he was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you could tell that officer was like, not again. He had done, probably 20 plus, maybe more wellness checks at our apartment. So he walked right in.
20? Wait!
Maybe more. Oh yeah. Yep. Because there was a baby who was screaming. No one was caring for it. Possibly baby left alone. Now, no food at the house. Oh yeah. And they were like, ma'am, it's an infant. Like, we have to come. I left a note on our front door and said, everyone's asleep. Call my cell phone. Please don't knock on the door. Like, that's how frequent they would come, and they would walk in. I mean, to the point where this time when she was screaming and the baby's on my chest, I'm, pumping. My husband's cooking lunch. The other daughter is coloring, and in walks
You're like, come on in, officer. You want a sandwich? We're doing this again.
literally,
Like, it's
literally.
just
Yes, and he looked right at my oldest daughter who said this, who's coloring, and she never even looked up. She was unfazed by an officer walking through our home. That is not normal. That is not a
that's
normal
not normal.
reaction. And she said that she looked right at this officer, and he said, what is going on? And she said, oh, I'm okay if my dad wants to come pick me up. We can go to eat. We can go shopping as long as he takes me back home in the same day. And she did not skip a beat. And I'm nursing, or and I'm like, I feel like I am living in a different dimension. This can't be real.
So it's this postpartum, 2-week
2 weeks.
postpartum mom, still swollen, still sore, body is going haywire.
Yes.
Husband who also is sleep deprived,
Yes.
trying to integrate his kids, who he knows has an unhealthy situation over there, or it seems like they do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's, this cop comes in, and so all you guys are just like, what is this BS? Hey, y'all, it's ready to party. Like, officer, sit down. It's the same routine.
Mm-hmm. And he tried.
Why?
He tried to put her in check. He was like, "Let me tell you what. You have a really nice thing going on here, and he's gonna show up, and he's your dad." And he did. And she was like, just coloring away. I mean, totally dissociated. Like, you can tell.
Yep.
And bless her heart. I mean, at the time she was probably 9? I mean, she was little. And I mean, who's to blame here but one person?
So at the point to where, like, integrating them back into the household, it just seems kind of, somebody goes to prison, and we know that prison is not a place where you get rehabilitated. You are there to be punished. And in order to survive in an environment like that, you got to become a different person. You damn near, depending on how long your sentence is, you got to damn near become an animal to survive. Your instincts are like completely different than a person that what do you call people that aren't in jail? Regular citizens.
Yeah.
So I imagine that it's like that with kids that live in a household where they have to dissociate. They're taught to lie for gain. Manipulation is as easy as pie. I imagine it's the same thing, having to become an animal of sorts to survive in that household. And, when you send a prisoner back out on the streets, he or she, they're not reformed. They're just, now they have to get reacclimated to how the rest of society lives. And it's almost the same with these alienated children. They have to get reacclimated before they can be allowed to integrate. What do you think integration, and just generally speaking, what do you think integration should look like in cases where a kid might be harmful? They've been taught to lie. Perhaps they've had to develop a personality disorder just to cope. What do you think that looks like? Especially in a case like yours, where you got small kids and who are, easily influenced, and they love them.
I think if we're being incredibly realistic, we have to know that they did get time away from mom. And our biggest fear was always that they wouldn't leave for school. They wouldn't go to college. They would stay close, because even at a young age, she was like, you'll go to the community college right here. You'll live with mom. Like, she planted that seed so early in them. And we just hope and pray, because they're both incredible athletes. They're both incredibly fantastic students. Like, school was their safe place. Like, they always excelled. And I was like, to be them and just be able to go to school and focus. But she never really let them be at a school long enough to form any kind of friendship. I mean, they've been at 6 schools. So for no reason, all while living at grandparents' house with mom. So the manipulation there, they have to be separated from grandparents that they live with, mom's parents, older sister that's from a previous relationship who is in college now and not separated, still once again living at home. She didn't choose to leave. And then mom. It's, as long as they're under that roof with that kind of power, there isn't. They have to be able to separate. And even if she were to go to school like in our town, at least we would know, like, maybe there was a dorm and we could go there. We have to know that there was a separation and the ability to talk openly about experiences that really did happen, not what mom told you happened.
Yeah.
I do have hope, obviously, but we showed up in their lives weekly for 10 years. And I remember my husband and I just looking at each other and we said out loud, we're going to keep showing up so that every story that mom tells them doesn't match up. That our actions and how we treat them and how we love them does not match up with the person that mom is describing. And so that they would live in a state of confusion all the time, which that's not fair either. But at least we thought maybe we were throwing in like a wrench to like the story.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's good that you give them resources by which to refute the version of the truth that somebody has tried to put in their heads. Dad never showed up. He abandoned you. Well, no, I remember him and Chelsey sitting up in the stands. I just was too afraid to look at him, but I knew that he was there. To be a little girl, to be loved by a father, that's a special type of love. Like that's like, the whole, I got to be a daddy's little girl. And that is a priceless thing. And to think that these girls, I want you girls to hear this in case, because I know you're going to watch this, to think that you girls had this and it was taken away from you. You do have the ability to hold your mother accountable. You do have permission, in case nobody's giving you permission, girls, to set some boundaries with her. And she has to atone for what she stole from you, girls. She will. And that's for me, all of our stepchildren out there that are watching this. If your mother or your other parent or your father or anybody has done this to you, you can hold them accountable and they got to atone. I don't know if it'll happen, in any of our cases that are within the sound of my voice, but I do hope that happens. Is there a TikTok that you posted that you regret posting? Like, oh, I said too much.
No. There are some that I am still battling in my head whether or not I should post it or not because of the intensity. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm still so conscious of the girls because these weren't intended for them to watch because they already lived it. The repercussion of them watching these videos is only that they'll have both sides now. So in my mind, telling these stories, why would mom want to silence that if not so that she can keep this game going? And that was probably when I decided to start posting, I was like, what haven't we done? What's the move that hasn't been played? What's the most taboo thing that would be out of the box and just maybe have something land? And it was this, and my God, it was the hate that came so fast from every bio mom on earth. They were like, you're a piece of garbage. How dare you do this? And I just was like, the second I saw that ripple effect of hate, I was like, oh, we touched a nerve and I'm going to go full on.
I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
Because you're like, hey guys, I'm simply telling a list. I'm giving an account of a thing that happened that I experienced. So if you don't want me to talk about this thing, don't give me the experience. Don't give me the thing to talk about. That if you were on good behavior or even fair or sane behavior, I would not, because I'm not lying. Chelsey, you ain't lying. You're telling the truth.
Yes.
You're literally telling things. Hey, it's Wednesday. A police came to the door. You're literally telling what happened. So if that makes you a piece of crap for telling an experience, what about the person that's giving you the experiences to tell? I don't get how people can shirk the responsibility. I don't really get a lot of high conflict people coming to my page though. I used to share personal stories, but then I got snatched into coaching. So I stopped sharing too much personal stuff. And I guess I didn't have the balls that you have because I was in fear. Like I guess it's ballsy. Like me watching your stories. A lot of us that watch your page or watch your content, and everything will be tagged, linked below, by the way, guys. So you'll be able to go to all of Chelsey's pages. But I watch it and I'm like, been there, done that. Oh my God, I know what you're talking about, which is why people love you so much, because people don't want to feel like they're alone in this very isolating role, in this very isolating position. How do you keep your marriage stable amidst all crazy town? How do you just be like, okay, I love you. I'm going to stay with you. We're going to rock this thing out. But you're constantly under attack.
That has been one of the questions that keeps reappearing in all my comments. Like, can you give us some advice? And to be honest, one of the things that I used to say to him all the time was, what would we be fighting about if she wasn't around? Like, what would be our issue? Because other than her, life is pretty great. Like, so when my husband made the final decision that we would no longer be going to their games, we will send them messages, on their phones if they get them, but we will no longer be putting the girls in that position. That was by far, I would say, in our marriage, my lowest, because I was just so disappointed. I was so like, how nice for you that you made that choice for us and our babies. And I was truly hurt and devastated, but it wasn't that I couldn't understand, because I had watched him just be so beaten down that I just wanted to be the person behind him, just like holding him up. Because I was like, you have no idea what a gift you are, because she has put you through it. And this family, oh my gosh, when we went to court, even this past spring, when she had me on the stand, she was like, my family and I we're just so in shock that he even, is allowing Chelsey to do this, or that we're here in this, because we've known him since he was 17. Like, the manipulation that this family thought that they had their claws in him for life. And so to me, it's just,
now he's got this uncontrollable woman who won't shut her yapper.
yeah. And I'm like, you know what? He is that great, and he is that great of a dad. And in my mind, I'm just always there to be like, hey, remember, like, you didn't deserve this. And I think just knowing that, just being that voice for him, I can give him grace. And it doesn't mean that it doesn't still pop up. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, I wish you would have but the man is jaded. This system has dropped the ball for him more times than you can even imagine. And if I happen to have a platform where people want to hear me talk, he doesn't need to watch these videos. He supports me. He bought me this headset and the camera and all this stuff. So he's like, go let it rip. But he doesn't need to relive it.
Yeah, I love it. The reason I started doing it, because it was the same thing. I could not wrap my head around the courts believing this thing, the courts supporting this thing. And I remember, well, you guys have heard this story. I'm not even going to rehash it. So anyway, I could not believe some of the things that I was seeing too. And at one point, my husband was just like, I can't fight anymore. We can use this money to go. Yeah. We live in Manhattan, for God's sake. Yeah, so we can put a down payment on a brownstone. We could go on a vacation. He was like, but it's futile. There's no point in me fighting. I just don't have the fight in me. And I see what's happening to the kids. When my oldest stepdaughter came to court and testified and lied on the stand, that's when everything changed for me. I was like, oh, Naja, you thought it was child's play before. You thought this was a game, but you said, oh, okay. Knowing this kid since she was 8 years old, 7 years old, and seeing that, I said, oh, okay. So this is a different type of alienation, manipulation. This is a different type of spiritual warfare that I guess I didn't have an appreciation or even a respect or deference for. And I was like, oh, okay, we got to move way, way, way different. This isn't not what I thought it was. So I commend you for being your husband's mouthpiece. And that's why I did it too. Cause I was like, bitch, I got a microphone. I'm already at that point. I was already a content creator. I was doing hair and makeup videos, but now I'd be like, hey y'all. So guess who busted out the windows today? I'm wearing Naja Hall Beauty Velvet Fudge. So let me tell y'all a story. And that's literally what it was. Like, so I was like, he was not willing. He's not a social media person. Your husband's probably not.
He has zero social media, none.
He's same. I feel like these guys are so silenced, and then they meet women like us, and you're going to be like, hold my beer. Or in my case, what am I drinking lately? Prosecco. Hold my Prosecco. I got this. Yeah. So I'm so happy. I'm so thankful that you've chosen to be a mouthpiece and fight on this side of justice. And to some people, it's a stupid fight. To some people, they're like, why don't you find something better to do with your time? But this is our lives. This is your life. This is your family. These are your babies that are affected.
Right.
Do you have any advice for any stepmoms out there, or any, we're going to go down the list. Do you have any advice for any bio moms that find themselves constantly in court and they want to get along with their child's father and the new partner, but they just don't know where to start? Any advice for them?
I would say before you are walking in that court one more time, take a deep breath and think, what am I fighting for? Who am I fighting right now, and what is my actual goal in filing this additional motion, filing this other, like, what was the part that I played in this, and what do I hope to gain? Because I think if everyone just, who was, again, of sound mind, if you're of sound mind, that's the only way this counts. If you're not, then this goes on until the end of time. But
Yeah.
if you are of sound mind and your goal is to be a healthy family, why are you there again? Why are you back
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
That would be
Do you
my
have any,
advice.
what's your advice for the stepmom that knows that there's drama between her partner? Maybe she's dating, she's not married yet, between her partner and his baby mama, ex, crazy family, whatever. What advice do you have for her? She's new and she's not fully in, she doesn't know everything that's going on.
Does she have kids of her own or not?
Let's say she does not.
I'll just say this: my mother and my father both told me, like, this is not going to end the way that you think that it will. You are not going to change anybody's mind about anything, and we really, really, really suggest that you pump the brakes. And because I just immediately fell in love with this man. I mean, I'm talking first date. I was like, we're getting married. Like, I was so naive. I really, really was. But I was like, no, he is good. Like, this man is good.
But it's still true though. You were right.
I was right. And don't get me wrong now, my mom and my dad, and I mean, there's not a soul that meets this man that isn't like, wow, not only is he handsome, but he is kind. And I would do it again, but I would look at myself or this newbie and just think, who they are is who they are. What you see is what you're gonna get. And
so why did you ask, when I asked you the question, why did you want to differentiate between does a woman have kids or not? Were you some, yeah, well, I want to know, what was that about?
I think had I had children first, I would have been a lot more cautious about who I was willing to bring into their lives, or who the ripple effect was that I was willing to bring into their lives. Because beginning a blended family, me coming in empty handed, I was so arms wide open. I love them. I'm head first in. I want the matching jammies. I want you to know that you matter to me so much because you are a piece of my husband who I also love. And it was just unconditional. And these were babies. I mean, literally they were 4 and 1. I mean, they were babies. And so I was like, they don't have to be victims of this. We got this. And had I brought my own baby with me, I would have pumped the brakes and I would have taken it all in.
Yeah. Okay. What advice do you have to the support system, the aunties, cousins, godmothers, friends, partners of this person that is going through blended family conflict? And it could be the high conflict person, or it could be the same person, but like the support system, because they need some love too, or they need advice too. What would you say to them?
Be patient. Be patient with us, because we're in shock, because we need to keep telling you these stories, because we need you to confirm for us that we are not crazy, that this is wild. Yes. And you'll tell me, my family would have been like, no, it's not that crazy. You need to back up. Or mine would be like, no, girl, run. Like, that is wild. And I was like, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Lastly, to the fathers, to the parents, I'm sorry, because I'm focusing a lot on fathers, but to the parent that is being alienated from their child and lied on, and their kid is, you have to watch your kid be manipulated. What words of encouragement would you have for them?
As sad as it is, I would say find some peace. Find some peace in knowing that you did everything that you could, that you have a system that is not trained to back you in how you need to be backed. And it's got a lot of catching up to do before any real results will come. And just trust that the love that you gave them is inside them somewhere. And hopefully you don't alienate yourself from others because of how hurt and broken, because really you need a community.
That right there. You don't alienate yourself from others because it can happen so fast before they know it. Yes. Chelsey, it has been such a pleasure. I feel like I could talk to you all day. You're probably going to have to come back on the podcast. And the word on the street is that Chelsey is going to start her own podcast. So Miss Naja, you just call Miss Naja when it's time to be there. And you know, I will pull up.
I will. Thank you.
Yes. So tell everybody where to find you. How do we stay in touch with you, Chelsey?
This is where it gets embarrassing because if TikTok does, disappear, I made a very, very makeshift Instagram account called Hi, How Are Ya? Hi, How Are Ya? 11 or 13313. Girl, see, I don't even know. But Instagram is like what I'm calling it.
Okay. So how about this?
Home.
By the time this episode gets ready to come out, Chelsey will have her stuff together, and she will have some links that she's going to email me, and we will share. I'm going to share all of her links below. But I love the Hi, How Are You? Because that's how you open your videos. Listen, guys, we've had such an amazing time here. As always, this has been such an informative, edutaining conversation because y'all know I like to educate and to entertain. So I will see you Tuesday, every other Tuesday, or whatever Tuesday I feel like posting this on your favorite streaming platforms. We are everywhere you get your podcast. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of I Know I'm Crazy with Naja Hall.
I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy. I know I'm crazy with Naja Hall.